Okay, so good half. If you don't have any activity like that, I recommend that you bring one in, because this is described as one of the most powerful activities that we do at RILA. The way we do it at our RILA is it's called Take a Look Around. It is on the second to last night of camp. And basically, there's a list of questions. It's kind of like the step to the line if activity, but you're asked to come up on stage, and then there are 3 questions that are asked that anyone may answer. The first is, what do you want us to know about you? What do you never want said about you? And what can we do to support you? And so students asked to share 1 sentence, little quick bits, it's not life stories, but if you feel like sharing, you're able to get that off your chest and to see that you are not alone in what you're going through.
What were they? What do you...
Examples of questions?
No, what were your 3 questions? You said
Yeah, I can.
3 biggies.
What do you want us to know about you? What do you never want said about you? And what can we do to support you? And examples of questions might be, come to the stage if you are a girl, and then if you're a boy. Come to the stage if you struggle academically, if you excel academically. If you've ever been discriminated based on religion, based on race. Do you have this activity in a we can, if you, yeah, we can, I can definitely.
This is from Young RILA.
This is from Young RILA. RILA has talked about trying to incorporate some of this, but I can give you my email address as well.
And we've had it for years at RILA too.
Yeah, and we've kind of tweaked it a little bit. It's very different when I was at RILA than what it is now, apparently. But so the questions get steadily more invasive, I guess you could say. And you end up asking questions like, if you've ever considered hurting yourself, if you've ever felt unsafe in around an adult. And this is where the waterworks start. You have a lot of students who are experiencing some very emotional realities that are difficult, yes. And afterwards we have a half-an-hour session where we call it a dance break, and the music progresses from very slow to eventually more upbeat, and we ended on a positive note. But it brings up a lot of these emotional reactions. So teaching counselors about empathy and how to be empathetic without feeling like you have to fix a person and solve all of their problems. Because we're not certified to be counselors, to be therapists. That's not what we can do.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. I have it, yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. At least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Okay. So this is an example of something that you could use in training to demonstrate concepts like this without just talking to people. And so this is what we've been trying to do, is trying to find activities, videos for all of these tools that I'm discussing, to find a way to teach these to our counselors without just talking at them or sending them things to read. So these are just the ideas that we've come up with. Another one, this is iMessages. We're not going to watch this video because it's really cheesy and I hate it. But this is the idea of going from you statements to I statements. And this is something really important to teach conferees as well in debrief. So the idea of saying, instead of, you messed that up and you're doing it wrong, you just need to get your stuff together, saying, I don't understand what you're trying to do. I feel frustrated when nobody's communicating, nobody's working together. So shifting the blame from everybody else to explaining what makes, how you're interpreting it. So saying, I feel blank when blank because. So this is a really good thing for counselors and Rotarians to model, as well as the students, if you can teach them to use this in debrief as well. Okay, so this is the easy part. This, so the option one is what I think a lot of people already use. They do a training weekend. You go through your activities, you teach everybody how to do the activities, what materials are needed, etc. Another idea that we are in the process of trying to realize is a video library, which would be a resource ideally available to anyone who wants to use it online. And we actually have 2 people coming to our camp this summer to film a lot of the activities, and we're hopefully going to be putting together training videos that will be available as a resource to anyone who wants to use them. So 2 or 3 minute videos of each activity that has the objectives, the setup, the instructions, a clip of the video of like the progression of the activity, and then clips of debrief. And so the idea is that these will be watched before training, so that it gives people an idea of the activities you're going to be doing. You already know the what when you're coming into it, and you can focus on the how. So you can focus on how to debrief, how to use all of these different skills that you've learned and apply it to what you're doing. Because we feel like this is the part it's not as difficult to teach, and a lot of times it can be done through a simple video, and we don't need to spend as much time teaching the what. And again, if you've got counselors who are returning at Rocky Mountain Riley, we have Rotarians who come back every year, but they forget what the activities are. Some of them have to miss parts of training. It happens, and you know what? We feel like we should accommodate for that, and it's not that hard to do if we can get this up and running. So hopefully we will have more to share with you guys next year and give you access to all of these
We
resources.
also have logistics of where people live, too.
Yeah, and it makes it difficult. If you've got a counselor who lives 10 hours away and can't make it back to training twice, if we have 2 training days or something like that, it just makes things difficult. Yeah, so that's a really cool idea. If anyone's interested in being part of that, we would love input. Another thing that we've talked about is how to deal with abuse and harassment training. In the past, we've had someone who is with our Rotary Club who is trained to facilitate this, and they'll come in and give like an hour speech at training. What we found is that it could depend on the facilitator, but we have a lot of snoring that ends up happening during this just because it's not as engaging, it's not as interesting. So some ideas we're playing with this for this year are doing an online certification course ahead of time. This is something that costs a little more money. I think Dave knows a little more about this. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work. But we have a company who, you go online, you take a course, you take a test, then it sends the results to whoever's proctoring it. And then in training, or in the in-person training, what we thought about doing are having scenarios acted out. So you have somebody, for example, a friendly Rotarian places a hand on the shoulder, doesn't think anything of it, but that actually could be something that is interpreted by a counselor as uncomfortable, and I don't like that. It depends on personal space, things like that. So there are a lot of things that we don't think of as being issues that actually might be for some people. And abuse and harassment training is not just about preventing rape and things like that. It's much more subtle, nuanced things that we have to be aware of as counselors. Okay, another thing that we've done, apart from having pairing between, we have a younger counselor and a Rotarian counselor, is doing, before camp, having Rotarians in pairs or counselors in pairs with returning and new people so that you get, okay, if I have any questions about what I'm supposed to be doing in this job or ahead of time, if I'm nervous about certain things, it's a sounding board. You can go to this person and say, okay, what's your advice for the first day? I'm super nervous, things like that. Just having somebody who's your go-to person to connect with before camp and get some advice from. Okay, so my questions for everybody here is, I know you have a lot of experience with facilitating, with teaching, things like that. What other things would you add to this toolkit? Like what things that fit in this how circle do you think are really important for counselors? I'd kind of like to open up discussion if you guys have any other thoughts about these things. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, just one quick thing, we
Yeah.
do everything in pairs, so we always have things led by 2 leaders, so you never leave a student alone with just one person.
Yeah.
Just some background information on organizational leadership. So what we talk about with our master facilitator during the training, types of power, leadership styles, including obviously service leadership. You have the group development part already in there and the facilitation skills, but really the types of power and leadership styles.
Okay, what does that look like?
We talk about referent, legitimate, expert, reward, corrosive. Those are just different types of power. We explain, what situations we see them in and what kind of power we see at RILA, what kind of power we should see at RILA. Leadership styles, like you have your high control, your moderate control, your low control, and your leadership, or your servant leadership. So,
Cool, so maybe talking with counselors at training about different leadership styles.
it's just it's nice background so that they're more educated than the students coming in.
I was kind of forced into a situation last year with training where I wound up having to make a video and put it on YouTube, and then I made sure that nobody could see it except for my target junior counselors. But we actually talked about doing a little bit more of that, where you can't always get everything into that weekend beforehand. And I love what you're talking about with sending them these on Facebook, sending them videos that are there, but also doing a little bit of training as a YouTube, make it as a YouTube video and send that out to them. Okay, here's something that maybe we can take that out of the weekend training. It's not really necessary. But here's how you do it, and use it as a YouTube video.
Yeah, these could definitely be on videos talking about the different types of power and leadership styles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I think that was kind of helpful. I hope I didn't confuse anyone.
Well, we're going to get a copy of that, so.
Yes. Yeah, you can go through it at your
That
own
was
pace.
awesome.
Watch some of those videos. Some of those are good references for you as well as for the people that you like.
Well, you're moving from the printed page to the technology of
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And it expands your time frame so much.
And especially when you're working with people my age, we like technology. It does work well, even if I'm not sure why people are saying Facebook is going down. I've not heard of anything like that.
I think maybe
Facebook's saying it.
Facebook's saying, oh wow, okay. Yeah, it's as far as I'm concerned, it's still been relevant in my life. But even if that's not an option, emailing out little mini assignments, things like that. Just watch this video and then post on a comment board. Like, what do you think? Or we'll talk about it at training. Following up with how is this relevant as a counselor? I think at training is really valuable to talk about these different skills.
So one of the things that Dana mentioned to me a week ago when we met was, I have some techie stuff I really want to try, but I'm a little bit intimidated by the older Rotarians that might not be very receptive. And I told her to just go for it. Yay. Yes.
You're not talking about anyone in this room. They're over there.
That was the idea of using Google Hangouts instead of conference calls when we had people who couldn't make it to board meetings. So instead of having 5 people on a conference call talking over each other, you couldn't see their faces. You can't hear. If you have Google Hangouts, you can set it up like this. It functions a lot like Skype, except whenever somebody's talking, it brings their face to the forefront so you can focus on who's talking.
What's that called?
Google Hangouts.
It's kind of like GoToMeeting and
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's Skype for a lot of people, and it's meant to be.
Dana, how do you plan on getting all your JCs fully engaged in each one of these? It's possible there are some 80% of your JCs will be watching and make comments, maybe a couple are working and don't really have time to really fully engage.
Yeah. The thing we're trying, it is on an honor system, unfortunately. The thing that we've been very conscious of doing is trying to make it actually interesting. Not just saying, go read this article, and then write like a page response, but just here's a 10-minute YouTube video. We're trying to find things that are actually engaging and actually useful. A lot of these TED Talks I've watched just for fun, and I found them incredibly useful. So finding things that they can actually find value in, and it's not just something that they're being assigned. Again, these activities, it is a lot of, post back on Facebook what you think, or we'll talk about it at training and follow up. So doing that follow up, I think, is really critical. But you're right, that is maybe a hole in this. How do you ensure that everybody's getting this? Something to talk about. I think I'm definitely below my time, but I think we're behind, so I think that's probably all right. Thank you.
That's awesome, thank you.